Mexico shares more than a 2,000-mile border with the U.S. It is Latin America's second largest economy and the world's third largest producer of crude oil. Now, the Bolsa is the second best performing major index in the world. That's year to date, up 3.5% or almost. Performance second only to Brazil's Bovespa, which before last week was down for the year, but is now up 8.5% year to date. S&P 500, as you know, down more than 3.5% so far this year. Now, numerous U.S. companies have a strong business presence in Mexico, from Coca-Cola to Pfizer to Home Depot. Carlyle Group, Citigroup, the list is pretty long there. Bullish investors in Mexico point to a relatively strong peso, a stable government, an openness to foreign investment as all boons. Bearish investors do cite concerns about inflation and the extent to which the U.S. slowdown will affect its neighbor to the south. We're going to bring in right now two experts. We have one fixed income, one in equity. Sergio Mendez, he helps to manage over $1 billion in fixed income. He's the chief investment officer at Prudential SA. And Will Landers, he is senior portfolio manager at BlackRock, helps to manage about $8 billion in Latin American stocks. And we also have our own in-house expert, Spanish TV anchor Jose Enrique Rioja. So welcome all of you, gentlemen. Sergio, I want to start off with you, if you don't mind. How would you characterize the investment environment in Mexico right now, particularly with Calderon's infrastructure plan? It would seem like it's a pretty good time to be a bond buyer.
Hi, Dira. Thanks for having me. I think that it's important to mention that Mexico has has done a very well task managing the liquidity cycle that we are now enjoying from high oil prices and all the external environment. So in that sense, I think Mexico has a very good perspective. I think that, definitely Mexico will feel the impact of the U.S. slowdown later in the year. But by now, the figures that we have shown, the economic figures that we have just seen, hasn't really feel the impact yet in the Mexican economy. But maybe later in the year we will feel the impact of this. I think the major issue by now in Mexico is the inflation. Inflation now, throughout the world, it's been a huge theme. So I think the central bank has a very important task in front of them, deciding what they're going to do, if they will allow a little bit more of inflation, as they have done, or if they start tightening monetary policy, putting in risk the impact of the U.S. deceleration in the economic environment in Mexico.
So we certainly do want to come back to that subject of inflation. But Will, I want to ask you, do you agree with Sergio in that Mexico will eventually feel the weight of the U.S. slowdown?
Absolutely. I mean, that's our biggest concern with investing in Mexico today, is the fact that so far the equity market hasn't priced in yet a slowdown for the Mexican economy. The numbers coming out of Mexico so far this year have surprised us on the upside. On top of that, I mean, you guys have been talking about oil this morning, and obviously Mexico is one of the bigger beneficiaries of high oil prices. And President Calderon's policies have been very good about putting that money to work in the economy, and I think that has helped keep the Mexican economy moving at a faster pace than you would have expected, given the close ties between the U.S. and the Mexican economy.
Hi, this is Jose Enrique Rioja. Sergio and William, thank you so much for being with us today. Just a common question for both of you. What do you think is going to be, the central bank decision to, going forward into the year? After last week, they increased the target for inflation. So certainly Mexico is feeling the pain in this regard. Is the BANXICO is going to raise interest rate there?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think that Banco de Mexico has now in mind, tightening interest or increasing interest rates. That's why they moved their pattern of inflation throughout the year, allowing definitely more inflation to come into the Mexican economy, and betting in that the U.S. slowdown will definitely affect Mexico's economy and will help in the inflation front. Also, I think it's important to mention that part of this inflation problem that we are facing, it's worldwide. So there is not a lot of use on monetary policy as a tool to combat this kind of environment, no? And as William was mentioning, I agree with him that the Mexican government is spending a lot of money right now, and because of the oil windfall, and maybe that could change throughout the year, no?
William, what is your outlook for that? What can we expect from the interest rate in Mexico going forward?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with Sergio. I think you're going to see interest rates staying on hold, especially given the fact that rates have come down here in the U.S. quite a bit, increasing the differential between Mexican rates and the U.S. rates. And Mexico can't afford to have the peso strengthen too much versus the dollar, because it already has a very tough competitive environment in terms of its exports. 85 to 90% of Mexican exports end up in the United States, but obviously there's a lot of competition from Asia, and if they hike rates too much and cause further strength of the Mexican peso, that's going to hurt their exports, and obviously is going to go against keeping the economy moving in the right direction.
Now, Will, you are somewhat underweight Mexico, no, compared to the rest of your LATAM holdings?
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, the one market that's doing better than Mexico this year is Brazil. So in our equity portfolios, we have a big overweight in Brazil, where we see, even before the investment grade announced last week. I was just going
to say, because that's pretty recent, their outperformance.
Absolutely, but we still found that you had a Brazilian market trading at much more attractive multiples in Mexico, and with earnings growth being much faster as well. In Brazil, you have both the commodity story going on, but you also have a very dynamic growth in the domestic economy, with the middle class expanding significantly over the last 3 to 4 years. Given our concerns with growth in Mexico, we did think that Brazil looked more attractive. Post-investment grade, that's even more true today, and we do still see more upside in Brazil than in Mexico. But in Mexico, there are still some sectors that we like quite a bit. Anything infrastructure-related we think is going to do well, given the investments that President Calderon is making. Our biggest position continues to be Movil, a stock that got beaten up a couple weeks ago when it reported first quarter results, but we still find it to be very attractive and trading at a slight discount to the Mexican market overall. So there's still some very attractive names out there, but we do prefer Brazil over Mexico at this stage.
And Sergio, where do you see the best names as far as corporate bonds go?
Well, I think, Movil is one of the favorites, definitely. Also, Coca-Cola FEMSA, I think it's a very, very good name to have debt with. No, but definitely, I think that we're still constructive in Mexico. I think that the liquidity cycle that we are enjoying internally in Mexico and the participation of the pension funds is putting a lot of liquidity down to play the market right now.
So Jose and I were speaking during the break. Sergio, maybe you want to field this one. I mean, the best sort of areas to be invested in Mexico right now.
Well, I think that, definitely, I would say that, everything that goes with the infrastructure is very attractive. I think that that the government is putting a lot of money from coming from the oil revenues to work. No, so I think that construction companies, and not maybe linked to home builders, no, but construction companies definitely, and infrastructure kind of sectors I will be more leaned towards. I think that Movil has percent telecom is always it's a very, very good bet, I would say. So I will be constructive in those kind of sectors.
And Sergio, this is Jose Enrique again. Which sector will you consider going to be the laggards in this situation? Which sector is going to be underperforming under the current circumstances?
Well, definitely, I would say that maybe home builders and some commercial retailers. I think that those guys could feel definitely the impact of the